What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Back Your Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Check us out on social media, IG, Twitter, at Rich Q&Q, the YouTube channel, Rich Q&Q. Appreciate all the engagement. And as always, we're brought to you by our good friends over at Play It Again Sports, 1450 Clemensbridge Road in Deptford, New Jersey. Used sports equipment and more. And I'm wondering, they're going to be selling a lot of those old school jerseys tomorrow night with the NFL draft. And it is upon us to help break it down. As always, our good friend, Lloyd Vance. Check him out on Twitter at Lloyd Vance, NFL writer, researcher, NFL Insider, and contributor as well. So the draft, Lloyd, the draft is upon us, right? So we just had the Super Bowl. We just had the season. Now we're in April. It's draft time. Aaron Rodgers, you called it, was going to get done this week. Finally, a New York Jet. We'll get into that in a moment, but always appreciate a couple moments of your time. So what's your overall consensus, your gut feeling? Are we going to see some wild, crazy trades come draft night, or do you think this will kind of be status quo?
Yeah, Q, to some folks, the draft is the most wonderful time of the year. And I think this year, the prospects they're solid. It's not that blockbuster group that's really got to place a buzz, So it's going to be interesting to see on Thursday how it shakes out. But I think at the top, the top 10 picks or so, you may see some kind of chalk. But there's always somebody that may want to jump up there and make a splash. And you look at the Arizona Cardinals at the third spot. I'm hearing that pick is there for the taking. If somebody wants to jump up and grab one of these quarterbacks, as everybody's talking about, that may be the spot where you see a big trade, Q.
Yeah, and I thought maybe if the edge rusher, Will Anderson, went second per se, the Cardinals would then turn around and be willing to trade down. Everyone, is it a foregone conclusion? Do you believe Bryce Young's going to the Carolina Panthers, that trade with Chicago, the quarterback out of Alabama? CJ Stroud, by a lot of pundits, was the top pick. I guess you can say top of the mock draft, probably about a month ago. I mean, look, did the kid struggle in some interviews? Who knows? The Panthers pro day, who knows? Hey, your guess is as good as mine, man. Or do we think, you might see you got to be kidding me, pick with another quarterback going first? But do you believe Young goes first?
Everybody I'm talking to is saying that this deal's done and Bryce Young's going to be the first overall pick. Now, to me, does he have the skill set and everything to be the first overall pick? We'll see. He is a little shorter, a little smaller guy. You wonder about the whole Kyler Murray effect. Yep. Is he a guy that's going to have that bias? But lately, it seems to be the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback goes number one overall. So we'll see. But everybody I'm talking to says Frank Reich is okay with his size. He's the guy that he wants to build his team around, as well as Scott Fitter, the general manager there. They really vetted Bryce Young, had him in for a couple visits, and he canceled all his other visits. So I think it will be Bryce Young. And then it's going to be interesting, as you're saying, Q, which of these other quarterbacks kind of where they're slotted. Is it high? Like we're thinking, CJ Stroud.
Yep.
And Will Levis, the guy, the Kentucky quarterback who everybody's talking about right now.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up too with Stroud, because think about it, the Texans need a franchise quarterback, right? So I know that the extremely low S2 score, right? So, does an NFL talent evaluator still keep him, talking about CJ Stroud out of Ohio State, at high regard to the fact where, hey, we're still comfortable drafting him at number 2? And think about this. This is a legacy draft, if you will, for DeMeco Ryans, right? First time head coach, first time tenure with the Houston Texans. We know they need a quarterback. I think they go with Stroud because you got to fill that big time gapping hole. I just think it's a foregone conclusion. I mean, I don't know. Do they go edge rusher? Do they pull a rabbit out of the hat and draft Anthony Richardson out of Florida?
Yeah, Q, I was just looking at, since it's back to play, I was looking at some of the betting lines in terms of when the first defensive player would be taken. And it's at 2.5. So, you wonder, is it going to, and I tend to lean with you, Q. I think that it's going to be over. I think it's going to be after that second pick that a defensive player comes off the board. We just know the National Football League is such a quarterback offensive mind driven league that they just kind of reach sometimes in terms of these quarterbacks. So I think that, whether it's Anthony Richardson, whether it's Will Levis or CJ Stroud, one of them is going to go in that second spot to Houston.
They need a quarterback, man. I mean, like I said, they need to solidify the franchise. They need to just start fresh. Obviously, the quarterback position is the premier position in all of sports. So let's just go by argument's sake. They go with Stroud. Arizona, maybe they go with the edge rusher. And then you got the Colts sitting there at 4. Same thing, right? All the smoke clears. Houston at number 2, Arizona number 3. So is it going to be Levis? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson? Pardon me. Does Anthony Richardson, let me ask you this, have the most upside out of all these quarterbacks? Do you think of him like a Jalen Hurts dual threat?
Yeah, that's a great question, Q. And I think Jalen Hurts did not have as many opportunities to throw the football, but he seems to be a little bit more accurate than Anthony Richardson now. Anthony Richardson's measurables, when you look at the combine and watch his private workout, this guy, pops off the screen. He's got that big arm. He can run. He can move around the pocket. But, in terms of the National Football League, I still think he's going to need a couple of years to develop. He's not a guy that you're going to plug right into the offense right away, and he's going to make that big difference that we've seen with some rookie quarterbacks. Think of Matt Ryan leading his team to the playoffs as a rookie, Joe Flacco as well. So, I think that Richardson is going to be a very high pick, and somebody's going to take a chance on him. And you talk about Indianapolis at 4 and Seattle at 5. You're probably going to see a lot of these quarterbacks shake out around there, whoever's left after some of the bigger quarterbacks we talked about earlier taken.
So we'll get to Seattle in a moment. I want to kind of just close out. So let's just play devil's advocate here. If Richardson goes number 4, I think Seattle at 5. This is the pick that they got from Denver. I think this is going to be kind of the primary pick spot to watch. And I'm going to tell you my rationale here. So we haven't mentioned the big man, Jalen Carter, right? The defensive tackle from Georgia. Again, we know about the off the field issues. We know about the concerns, but we also know that he fills an urgent need that many teams have to have, right? Defensive tackle, a guy that can wreck the game. Okay, fine. We know that the head coach of Seattle is no stranger to taking on guys, maybe you're, where you would say not the best character guys. If for some reason Seattle doesn't take Jalen Carter, then if you go to form, maybe he falls to Detroit, right? And they took Hutchinson. I think the Raiders need a corner. I think Atlanta needs a corner. I think Chicago, if they're going to build around a quarterback, maybe they go Carter for defense, or they go tackle, which leaves me to the Philadelphia Eagles at number 10. So if Carter slips through the cracks, Seattle doesn't pick him up, can you see him dropping all the way to 10 for the Philadelphia Eagles? Or do you believe that Seattle and or Detroit will take a flyer on him at 5 and 6 respectively? Yeah,
Q, I don't think Jalen Carter, maybe he gets the Eagles at 10, but he's not going any lower, lower than 10. You know what I mean? Like, no one's not going to leave him sitting there for pick 11, 12, 13, 14. He's that big of a first round talent that he will go in the first top 10 picks, and somebody's going to take a flyer on him, Q. And then you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. They do have the infrastructure to bring somebody in with the checkered past, we'll say, and give him an opportunity, and they have the support system in place, and they'd be more than happy to grab him. I know all my Eagles family and friends are talking about them taking running back Bijan Robinson, but I still believe it's going to be an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, which is typically the team's MO.
Yeah, I can see Seattle grabbing him. I don't think Seattle, look, maybe Seattle tries to come up with a contingency plan after Geno Smith. That's, I don't know. Detroit, they got that pick from the Rams. So I think they're going to be waiting to see how the top 5 unfold. Look, do you trade back for a quarterback needy team? If that's not the case, then I definitely think Wilson's going to be the pick, the edge rusher. And again, it's a nice little opposite to Aiden Hutchinson as a long term. So I don't know. I just don't think they're ever going to think it. They want to start building that defense as well. So if you're the Detroit Lions, you see them go defense at 6?
Yeah, I do too. And I agree with you that cornerback is an area that they need to look at. Christian Gonzalez is a very good young corner who's really popped off the board. And why not get a defensive lineman and keep building up with Aiden Hutchinson? And what Dan Campbell is trying to build there at Detroit, he's building that tough physical football team. And why not build it at the defensive line position where they're getting heat on a quarterback in a variety of ways? So, it's going to be fun to see our Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator, if he has his say so. I know he's going to want to probably get another guy that can stuff the run and definitely help get after the passer too. So, there's some good defensive young guys out there, and I think, as you were saying, Detroit's going to wait to see who kind of falls to them. Is there that run on the quarterbacks that we've been waiting for, and then maybe one of these receivers jumps in there as well, tight end. So there's a lot of areas need for some of these teams, and there are going to be some surprises after those quarterbacks go.
All right, six picks in the books. And again, Lloyd Vance joined us on NFL Insider Wednesday edition BYP with Q. Rich Quinones here from our very good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Check them out online, and don't forget, subscribe to the channel, Rich Q on Q. All right, then you got the Raiders at 7, and I know they fielded, multiple reports. They fielded a call from the Titans, I believe, about trading down to that number 11 spot. It didn't materialize. So I still go, all right, let's look at best defensive player. Is it going to be the cornerback from Oregon, Christian Gonzalez? He'll be a year 1 starter, plenty of upside. He's just 20 years of age. He's got that ideal size, 6'2", 197, ran a 4.38. 4.38 in the 40-yard dash, explosive athleticism. So the Raiders need a ball hawk back there in that secondary. So what's your feeling? Where do the Raiders go at 7?
Yeah, Q. I when I did my needs, I looked at the Raiders and I thought defensive tackle, corner, as you were saying. These are positions need. They got rid of Darren Waller, maybe a tight end sitting there, and they start thinking about that. But I tend to think that they're going to try to fix that defense. You have Josh McDaniel there, who's a former Patriots guy, and they know it's all about shutting the other team down. So maybe, I know he's an offensive guy, but he's going to try to build up that defense some more, because they allowed way too many big plays last year. And I do kind of think that one of these corners out there, maybe Joey Porter Jr., you talked about Gonzalez, one of them is going to be there for them, that spot there, and they're going to try to grab one of these guys, because their coverage unit's got to get better.
Same thing with Atlanta. I mean, if that kid's not there, if he's not picked up at 7 by the Raiders, then he can be selected by the Falcons. I still think the Falcons have to go cornerback. Look, we just saw the money that they just gave their left guard, offensive side of the ball. They have a need for cornerback. If I'm there, listen, I would make a play. They just cut one of their veterans. So I kind of like Atlanta to also go defense, fix up that secondary, number 8.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, Q. If we see one of these quarterbacks slide, do they jump up and grab them? Because they also have a need there at quarterback. So, but I think they're going to have to fix that defense. Another team that they just had trouble stopping people. And then offensively, I think they still have enough with Pitts and the rest of the guys to kind of bring something together there. So, Atlanta, another team that needs to fix themselves defensively. And it's probably going to be one of those corners. You also have to look at Tyree Wilson, the defensive end coming from Texas Tech. He's a very big, long, physical guy at 6'7". He could fit in that spot. We talked about Carter earlier. Where's he going to kind of slide to? And then you also got to look at it in terms of Atlanta. They want to build that offensive line as well. So there's a couple guys I was looking at: Georgia's Broderick Jones, and Florida's Osiris Torrance, and then Paris Johnson coming from Ohio State. So, I think eventually somebody's going to have to go after one of these offensive linemen too there. But yes, if you're looking at team needs, the Falcons definitely have to fix that defense first and foremost.
Yep, I would agree 100% with you. All right, how about the Bears? So I'm wondering, do you believe that they believe in their quarterback as we speak, in Justin Fields?
I do. I think Justin Fields, uh, he's landed in a good situation with Eberflus there, and Eberflus is looking at the defensive side of the ball, and he saw Justin Fields make enough plays last year. Now he's got to get more consistently in terms of his passing and not be such a run first type of guy. But I think that they have a playmaker there, and the other quarterbacks will be long gone by their pick. So I think they're going to try to build around him. I think he was sacked over 40 times last year, almost 50 times. I am right now taking Peter Skronsky from Northwestern. He's a good, tough physical lineman, and he can play a variety of positions, and they can slide him in. So they've already been scouting him. He's right there. Obviously, Northwestern, very in the Chicago area, very big. So, I think he may be the pick there. But yes, they're trying to build up the receivers and everything else to support Justin Fields there.
Yeah, that's not a bad play coming out of Northwestern. So again, you still got the quarterback still on the board that we really didn't get to, aside from Young and Stroud. I mean, Richardson, Levis, and then you got the Philadelphia Eagles. So if Carter's not there, so there's going to be two schools of thought. Eagles haven't drafted a running back, a legit running back, not Keith Byers, who was a hybrid. You got to go Michael Haddix back in, I think, 83, right? And let's
I'm
just
old enough
say,
to remember the pick, and I still hear the booze.
yeah, right. And let's just say that didn't quite pan out for the Philadelphia Eagles. I didn't even mention the kid Robinson yet. So do you think the Eagles even take, if this kid's on the board and you want another weapon for Jalen Hurts, even though there's some floating rumors, they already got the kid from Seattle, Penny, coming off some injuries. There's been some rumors, I don't know, that where it was started, maybe try to trade for Henry or Cook. Again, if Robinson's on the board, do the Eagles draft him at number 10? Do you believe they do? This is something totally, I guess you can say they would have to do a 180, right? It's very un-Eagle-like, uncharacteristic, or do they go, if Carter's off the board, do they go with Nolan Smith, the edge rusher from Georgia? Because, they love to just dominate in the trenches. The Eagles never have too many pass rushers.
Yeah, Q. And I can only lean on past history with the Philadelphia Eagles. And you talk about, it seems like their fans always want them to take a running back or a linebacker, and they never do in the first round. And running back to me kind of would be a luxury for this team. You talk about Rashard Penny there. They believe in Gainwell. I think they have enough there, and they could take other pieces to kind of help Jalen Hurts. Robinson, everybody's talking about he's a once-in-a-lifetime player, comparing him to, an Edgerrin James type. But you have to wonder, in the NFL, it's just not a running back-driven league anymore. I was just looking at the franchise tags, and the running back position had the lowest franchise tag out of all the positions. So, it's a position that I think they can build in other spots. And I still think that Eagles, given their history, you talk about Nolan Smith, who's a defensive lineman, or an offensive lineman, like Paris Johnson coming out of Ohio State, a versatile guy who they could put at guard, because I'm hearing Cam Jurgens is not that ready to play, and he's more of a center, and they have a need at that guard position. And then Johnson can also play tackle. So I still think they go lineman there, and you're going to hear a lot of boos. I still remember the Ricky Williams when they wanted Ricky Williams, and they got McNabb instead. So, maybe one of those type of situations.
Hey, well, look, I mean, again, it worked out pretty well with McNabb.
Exactly.
I mean, but listen, there's always going to be the hits and the misses. Where do you think, where's a good landing spot for Richardson? Where's a good landing spot for Levis?
Well, you talk about Indianapolis and Seattle. Seattle gave that contract to Geno Smith. That, yes, it was a 3-year deal, but I'm hearing it's very cap friendly, and they could get out of it in 1 year if they had to. So those are two good spots: Indianapolis, Seattle, and Tennessee. Don't forget about Tennessee in terms of, I think they're ready to move on from Tannehill. He's just not getting it done. And then you have Malik Willis there, the kid they took from Liberty last year, and he started the playoff game, and he's not ready either. So, I think those three teams are definitely quarterback needy, and you'll see one of them take one of those other quarterbacks other than CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, who are probably long gone by that point. So it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be, we'll see who sits in the green room the longest. You know, they were just showing, we're going to have Aaron Rodgers in a second, but I still remember in 2005 at Radio City Music Hall, him sitting there as us, the guys in media row, were looking over our shoulder, and that poor guy sitting there. So one of these guys is going to slip and be sitting there, and he'll be the big news of the first round, whether it's Jalen Carter because it's character issues or one of these quarterbacks.
That was also one of the all-time great drafts by one Ernie Accorsi.
Yeah, Ernie's a great guy. I know him from working on the Black College Football Hall of Fame committee, and he's just a historian, a wealth of knowledge of the game, a guy who grew up in the old Baltimore Colts organization, and then he built the Giants team. So yeah, he did a great job with that draft.
It was Corey Webster, Justin Tuck, Brandon Jacobs, and then the fourth one was Eric Moore. Obviously, 3/4 won 2 Super Bowls. Moore didn't pan out. How about the Giants, Washington, and Dallas? So, you think where they're going to be at draft wise. I mean, are we looking at best player on the board? Are we looking at need? I mean, look, are the Giants going to go tackle again? Are they going to potentially draft a back? Are they going to go wide receiver? I mean, there's at this point, I mean, there's this buzz that the Giants might do something crazy on draft night. But again, that's not their MO, aside from when they turn around and swap picks with the Chargers for Rivers and Eli Manning. So where do you think the Giants go?
Yeah, the Giants are interesting, Q, because they're picking at number 25. So
correct.
When I looked at their team needs, I have receiver, cornerback, interior lineman, and tight end. I know they got Darren Waller now, but I am right now taking Notre Dame tight end Michael Mayer. He's a guy who can block and catch, and he can do a variety of things up for them. And maybe they go 2 tight end formation, and they gave Daniel Jones a lot of money, and he needs that security blanket. So I think tight end is definitely a possibility. Maybe if one of these receivers slides down the board, they'll reach up and grab him as well. And lately, they've seemed to try to fix the offensive line every draft, but I think they should really try to get more explosive, because there's just not a lot of weapons other than Saquon right now. We'll see how Waller does in his comeback for the Giants.
What if Zay Flowers is on the board from Boston College? You think they grab him at 25?
It could be. He's a guy. He's not that burner, but he's a good route runner. He has good hands, and they could plug him in, and he could probably help out in the slot and help move the chains. So definitely, he's a guy that could be a good pick for them as well.
All right. How about the Washington Commanders? Look, I mean, we kind of know where they're at. And then you got the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah. So, Washington's picking at 16 and are 8-1 team. And we talked about last time about them trying to make this facelift and redo the group. And you just never know what they're going to do. Right now, in my mock, I have them taking TCU receiver Quentin Johnson. He's a guy that can make some plays for them, and I still think they need some more. I know they got Dotson there and Harry McLaurin, but I still think that they need some other receivers. We're not sold on the quarterback there as well. No. So, as much as they can bring in to help that quarterback, it's possible. Also, I think they have some issues on their offensive line as well. They need some interior linemen. So that could be a pick for Washington there, 16. Dallas is at 26. So they're another team. They let Schultz walk to the Houston Texans at tight end position. I have them taking Utah tight end Dalton Kincaid. This kid, he's not the best blocker out there, but he's that new age receiving type tight end that you're looking for. Everybody's trying to find that next Travis Kelce. He's a guy that Dallas could look to at 26, but he may be gone by then. But Dallas, definitely, they need a tight end. I know they signed Pollard, but they need a running back, probably receiver as well. And then their defense, always, I think their defensive back half, particularly their safeties and their corners, they need some help there as well.
I was looking, pardon me, Washington has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks, but really back end, fourth round, fifth round, sixth, seventh, pick 1, 2, 3. I should say 1, 2, first, second, third round, 16, 47, 97. Agree with you on the Dallas Cowboys. And again, the Dallas Cowboys are one of those teams where there's really no rhyme or reason sometimes to what they're doing. I mean, obviously they've got it right with Parsons. All right, couple minutes before I let you get out of here. Aaron Rodgers, you called it last week. Finally, it's a done deal. We know it's a haul for the New York Jets. It's the one thing I think the Packers, it's weird. Aaron Rodgers comes out and says, hey, man, I wanted to FaceTime. We didn't communicate. All the stuff comes out. And now people, social media is, oh, my God, if they would have FaceTime, he'd still be with the Pack. No. They take, I believe right now, the Packers in Tampa take major steps back, right? They take, so when you look at the Bears, the Lions, Minnesota, this is their time right now. That's number one, to maybe make some noise. Especially Detroit. I think there's a lot of expectations there. You look at the Jets. Would you say Super Bowl on bust right now, Super Bowl or bust? And even from a betting odds on favorite, we know the odds are in their favor to compete for a playoff spot. I still think Buffalo is going to be the team to beat in the AFC East. How much, this move, how much does it move the needle for you per se? Meaning, all right, now you've got a team in place. You insert Aaron Rodgers. Here you go. This team is AFC Championship, Super Bowl or bust, period, or it's a disappointment.
Yeah, the Jets, Woody Johnson, owner, and Joe Douglas, their general manager, they've really gone all in. They're giving Robert Saleh everything he needs to be a successful coach. Now, Salah's been there. I think he's going on his third, fourth season there. So the rubber needs to meet the road, and the expectations are very high, especially when you bring in Aaron Rodgers, who's coming in, and he's bringing a lot of his cronies with him. And, they always had a very good draft last season with Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, a good young explosive receiver. They had Hall there, who's coming back from injury at running back position. So they do have a lot of pieces of the puzzle. Now, in looking at the AFC East standings, the Jets obviously were in the basement last year at 7-10. But, I have to move them ahead of the Patriots now. And of
course,
Miami was really not that far ahead of them. Miami was 9-8. So, the Jets, think about it. Some of those games that Zach Wilson threw away, those type of turnovers and bad game decisions late are not going to be part of what Aaron Rodgers brings to the table. So you're right, Q. I definitely think they need to get deep in the playoffs, I'll put it that way, not Super Bowl, but deep in the playoffs in order to make this team more relevant and the ownership happy. So they've invested in Aaron Rodgers. I thought they did a very good deal in terms of they still have their number one pick as well. So they swap first round picks, and then obviously they're not going to have some late. And you'll see if Rodgers plays at 65%, and they have to give over that first round pick next season. But I think it's a big deal for them, and I think they're right in the mix. And Buffalo, is their window closing? You talk about Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, they've been there for a while, and they haven't gotten it done. I think that overtime loss to Kansas City really was a heartbreaker to them in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and they kind of haven't recovered. Last year, they had a lot of injuries, and they just never bounced back from it. So I think the Jets are definitely a player in AFC East, and we'll see if they're able to make the playoffs and live up to all these high expectations.
Yeah, and you mentioned too, with some of the bad losses, I mean, when they gave up the punt return late to the Pats, they were teetering at plus 1,200 before Rodgers, official. Now they're plus 700. I think the Pats are cooked. I don't like the Patriots at all. The Jets right now, AFC East to win it, plus 220 to make the playoffs. Let me correct that. To win the AFC, the Jets are plus 700. Okay. To win the conference. To win the East, plus 220. So that's telling you something right now. The fact that the line moved from plus 210 to plus 220, I think the odds are going to go lower as the regular season draws closer, and then once we know the scheduling. My only concern is that, and again, I hate to kind of draw the parallels or the analogy. They got Brett Favre, and they were 3-3. They ripped off 5 in a row. He had 5 touchdowns against the Cardinals. They went 8-3. They beat the Tennessee Titans. And I remember that week, you and I talked about it when I was on the air in Delaware on 1290. And then I had Sims come on that same week. It was a big week for them. The Jets coming off that big win against Tennessee. They laid an egg. They proceeded to lose 5 straight. Brett Favre got hurt. He had the noodle arm. I'm concerned that Rodgers gets old overnight. And I'm also concerned that, when was the last time the Jets really had a vocal quarterback? And I say that because of this. How many times have we seen Aaron Rodgers basically call out his young wide receivers over the last series? How many times have we seen Aaron Rodgers say something during a press conference where your ears perk up? How many times have we seen Aaron Rodgers, or we've heard stories where it's been reported, he's not taking somebody under their wing per se? Zach Wilson sitting there saying, I'm going to make this dude's living hell. Shut up, Zach Wilson. Seriously, you're a bust right now. Just hold the clipboard and if you have to go in the game, that means because Aaron Rodgers got hurt, or they're beating someone by 35 points, and that's highly unlikely. But the persona, the character, what he says afterwards, if they have a 3 or 4 game losing streak and the media's on top of him and he's going back and forth, I don't care what anyone says. There's something to be said about that New York media and being under pressure and a microscope. And the Jets really haven't had big-time vocal quarterbacks. Think about it. Fitzpatrick, Wilson, White, Sanchez, Pennington. I'm trying to think. Testaverde was a fiery guy, but you just keep going down the list, down the line. Who's been their most vocal quarterback over the last 10, 15 plus years?
Yeah, it really has been. I started going back way in the Rolodex, and I'm looking at Ken O'Brien. Back in the early '80s, he kind of was a guy that he was a fiery player on the field, and he didn't mind kind of voicing himself. And
Richard Todd was a head case. Richard Todd, yeah. Brown. By the way, Brownie Nagel should be pissed off because Aaron Rodgers is wearing his number 8, but that's okay. But seriously, right? Yeah. If you go back and you think about some of these quarterbacks, I'm pulling up the list right now. I mean, who's the guy where you sat there and say, yeah, here's a guy that Todd, Fitzpatrick, Clemens, Smith, Flacco, McCown, O'Donnell, Rick Meyer, Frank. I mean, Jesus, God, this is it's like a who's who.
Yeah. And I think of my old buddy, Glenn Foley. These guys, it's just a revolving door there. They just have not had that guy with their prestige. And yes, they gave it a go with Favre, and he to be honest with you, I didn't think he had much left, and then he pulled off that magical season with the Vikings. So, this is a big gamble for the New York Jets, but they're saying, why not? Why not take this chance to bring in a quarterback? Yes, he's 39, almost 40, but you wonder about these injuries, Q, and you also wonder about level of play. That last week when he could have got in, Detroit took it to him in Lambeau. And there were some throws he left on the field, that out pass where he always had one of the best arms in the league was kind of fluttering, and he had some bad interceptions. And was he able not to drive the football down the field? Yes, he blamed those young receivers, and that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. He is a finger pointing type of guy, and then
Bingo.
You wonder about that New York media, the back of the Post and all the other papers there's more media and more scrutiny in New York than any other situation. So the spotlight is on Aaron Rodgers. And as always, be careful what you wish for. And they're going to give him that number 8, and they're going to look for him to be that last piece of the puzzle I was talking about and drive his team to playoffs. But a lot of expectations, and it could go awry real quick.
And that's my whole point. And you mentioned that last game against Detroit, barely cracks 200 yards, has a couple bad picks, can't lead them. I mean, listen, what if it's one and done, right? What if he turns old overnight, can't be father time, and the Jets are left holding the bag here, and you got to start all over again? That's why when you think about it, these types of moves, it's very rare you can get the let's go get Peyton Manning, right?
Yeah.
Coming off the neck surgery, and then he throws for 55 touchdowns, and he's comeback player of the year, NFL MVP. They win a Super Bowl. Noodle arm, their defense wins a second Super Bowl. Okay, fine. Brady, right? I think there's exceptions to the rules. I'm not saying Rodgers is not an all-time great. He's one of the most gifted athletic throwers of the football quarterbacks we've ever seen. But you also see cracks over the last several years. And here's another thing. Aaron Rodgers is not a big game quarterback. So come talk to me in week 15, 16, 17, where they got to go on the road and beat Buffalo, right? For a playoff spot, or got to go down to Miami, or, the Patriots, who have had their number. And I kind of am where you're at. I mean, look, they're going to get a boatload of primetime games. We know that. It's probably going to be Jets and Giants Sunday Night Football. Hell, it could be a Thanksgiving Day game. I don't know. It could be Christmas, like we saw a couple of years ago with the Victor Cruz game, which, by the way, the Giants go this way, the Jets go that way with the franchises, of course, of those franchises. So I tend to side with you on this, where if this team's 5-1, 6-1, it's a hell of a story. But if they're 2-3, 2-4, 3-3, even he's struggling a little bit, man, I'll tell you, you've set your franchise back. That's why I believe, and I know you don't agree with this, I believe it's Super Bowl or bust. If not, it's a mitigated disaster.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting to watch this soap opera. And we waited a long time for it to come together. We knew it was going to happen because he wasn't going back to Green Bay. And now he's here in New York, and he's going to have his chance. He's got all the weapons around him, and he cannot say, they're not giving him everything he needs, to cook the meal. So
That's
he
right.
needs to be the chef. You know what I mean? And they still have a lot in the draft, and Joe Douglas has done a very good job in terms of stocking that team. So everything's going to be there for Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see if he's there ready to take it. And you talk about the other side of the coin. I do agree with you with the Packers. Jordan Love, first round pick 2020 in the first round, very surprise pick coming out of Utah State. He's going to have his opportunity to be the man and drive this team. And from the sample size that we've seen the last couple of years, I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it. So, and you talk about Detroit, who already beat them there last year in Lambeau. I think Detroit could take a step up and possibly win that division. And I know later on after the draft, we'll talk about our predictions and everything. But right now, Detroit is coming fast and furious for the Packers. And this is definitely a setback for them.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting how everything starts to play itself out. First things first, tomorrow night, Thursday night. I'm sorry. What is it? Thursday night, Friday night. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Q, you remember back in the day when you and I were sitting in Radio City, it was a one-dayer, or it was Saturday, and then Sunday would be, the quiet day. But now it's Thursday, it's Friday, and Saturday.
And I remember
KC's going to be crazy.
And I remember when the Giants won the following years, when the Ravens drafted Flacco, and we already saw it on the board before they even made the announcement. Remember that? They had the TV there.
Yeah, that was old school days. Yeah.
We're dating ourselves. By the way, I like the little paying homage to the Big Tuner. If you're going to let me, if you want me to cook the meal, at least let me shop for the groceries.
That's right.
That to me is one of the all-time greatest quotes ever in sports.
It was, and he was right. There's nothing worse than a meddling owner. Let me do my job, man. And that's what Parcells was saying there.
100%. He is Lloyd Vance, our NFL Insider, at Lloyd Vance. Give him a follow on Twitter. Good stuff as always from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports. Lloyd, appreciate you jumping on board for a couple moments. This edition of BYP. We will recap the draft next week, and then we'll continue with our in-depth look around the league with all these divisions. And then before you know it, it'll be the dog days of summer, and we'll have to start looking at the win totals, and the schedule comes out. So we like to do the wins and losses that never, ever pan out. You know how I feel about the wins and losses.
Oh, I hear you. It's almost more fun to look at the prop bets and see the, win over unders. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. You got it. Appreciate a couple moments as always.